Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Brian Wallace, 27, was a rising star on American YouTube, one of those creators with contagious energy, capable of risking everything to captivate his audience. Born in a modest suburb of Indianapolis, he had built his own reputation through editing tutorials, garage challenge videos, and an almost obsessive flair for spectacle. For several years, he had shown spectacular stunts, extreme experiments, suspenseful scenes. He had jumped out of a helicopter, slept for a week in an abandoned house, tasted forbidden foods, put his body to the test to entertain. His videos reached millions of views in a few days. Brands jostled for position. Fans chanted his name at conventions. But things had changed. YouTube was flooded with new talent, the algorithm had become more capricious, and above all, an audience that had become more demanding. Views were dropping. The comments were becoming cruel. Another guy losing momentum. You've done your time, Brian. He looks like an old man who wants to play young. These sentences were going around in his head. One January evening, winter blanketed Pittsburgh in a thick, silent mantle. In his studio apartment, which had become almost too large for him alone, the blue neon lights flickered slightly above his computer. Screens showed plummeting statistics. He stared at the thumbnail of a viral video of a 19-year-old influencer who had climbed a radio tower naked. 14 million views. In 3 days. Brian gritted his teeth. Sitting cross-legged on the carpet, he turned to his lifelong friend and regular cameraman, Jeremy Knox, who was nervously tapping his phone on the couch. We need to hit harder, something never seen before. Bury me alive. We'll film everything from the inside. Jeremy looked up slowly. He'd known Brian since high school. He'd seen him burn the candle at both ends, always pushing further, always pushing harder. But there was something in his voice, in the steady gaze, it was different. It wasn't ambition. It was desperation. Are you sick or something? Do you want to get buried just for the buzz? Brian didn't answer right away. He lit a cigarette, took a long drag, and blew it toward the ceiling. Then, calmly. Not just for the buzz. To prove that I still have something. That I'm still capable of doing what no one else dares. No one has ever done it seriously, with real immersion, real equipment, real silence. I will survive 6 hours underground. Alone. In a coffin, 1.5 meters deep. And the world will see that I'm still here. That I'm not dead. Not yet. Jeremy froze. He knew that once an idea took root in Brian's mind, there was no dislodging it. But this time, it was different. This wasn't a parachute jump or a night in an abandoned asylum. It was death that he was going to brush past. And deliberately. Brian, seeing her hesitation, added quietly. We've got it under control, man. I've done my calculations. 1 oxygen tank for 6 hours. 2 cameras. A microphone connected to the surface. An emergency hatch if things go wrong. You're here, you're my guardian angel. I just need you to bury me there. And get me out at the end. Nothing more. Jeremy put down his phone. He crossed his arms, worried. What if something goes wrong? What if the oxygen tube gets clogged? What if you panic? What if you lose consciousness? You talk about silence, but what you're looking for is nothingness. Brian stood up, his gaze determined. You think it's not already a void here, Jeremy? Look around you. We're living in oblivion. I want one last burst of energy. I want to leave a mark. Even if it costs me 6 hours of fear. I've lived through much worse. A long silence fell over the room. Outside, the wind blew hard against the windows. Jeremy knew he didn't really have a choice. That evening, they signed their pact. It took them 2 weeks to organize everything. Thanks to a dubious contact met on a forum specializing in underground videos, Jeremy and Brian managed to rent a private plot of land on the edge of the Allegheny Forest, a vast, quiet, wooded area north of Pittsburgh, rarely visited in winter. The owner, an old man with shifty eyes, asked no questions. He accepted the cash and simply nodded. "As long as you leave before the snow melts," he had simply said. The location was perfect, secluded, nestled among the pine trees, hidden from view. The air was dry, biting, and silence reigned supreme. A place outside of time. And for Brian, that was precisely what made the experience more real. They purchased a modified coffin on the black market through a fake funeral director, a certain Clint Red Dorsey, a massive, tattooed man with a squeaky laugh. For a few $1,000s, he provides them with a coffin carbon fiber reinforced, waterproof and ventilated, originally designed for simulations of mortuary accidents in military laboratories. It's tough, believe me. Even a bear can't break it. But I advise you not to stay in there too long. The silence in there, it eats away. Red threw this sentence at them before disappearing in his pickup truck. Inside the coffin, Jeremy carefully placed 2 thermal cameras, one fixed to the interior ceiling to film Brian from above, the other on the left flank for close-ups. A cardioid microphone directional, for capture every breath, every beat, every word. A series of dim red LEDs, hidden in the walls, so that the atmosphere remains visible but oppressive. And above all, a discrete ventilation tube, rising to the surface through a hollow, almost invisible trunk to the naked eye. They ran several technical tests the day before. Everything worked. The audio transmission system to Jeremy's tablet was operational. The oxygen flow was stable. The camera's batteries lasted 8 hours. Brian was smiling. But Jeremy, he was not sleeping. On the morning of February 15th, the sky was a milky gray. The ground was hard, almost frozen. They dug a hole 1.60 meters deep, enough to cover the coffin without attracting attention, even if someone passed by. Has 10:02 sharp, after checking every connection, every detail, Brian lay down inside. His face was calm, almost solemn. He wore a black sweater under his jacket, his hands crossed over his chest as if in a funeral home. Jeremy filmed everything. The interior. The preparations. Brian's face. His slow breathing. The strange peace he exuded. On a tree a few meters away, a manually mounted surveillance camera recorded a bird's-eye view of the clearing. Another, from a bird's-eye view, inside the coffin, showed Brian's body lying with his eyelids closed. 6 hours in the dark. "I trust you, man." His voice was low, but assured. Jeremy knelt beside the coffin. He hesitated for a split second, then gently closed the lid. There was a dull metallic click, then a crushing silence. He stood there, his hand resting on the cold wood, as if to apologize. Then he stood up, his hands slightly trembling, and walked over to the small excavator he had rented for the occasion. He started the engine, which creaked, and began to toke over the coffin. Shovelful after shovelful, the earth was slowly falling, muffling the sounds, the tracks, the light. After a few minutes, the coffin had completely disappeared under a thick layer of brown earth. The silence of the forest resumed its rights. Only light breath was still escaping from the ventilation tube, almost imperceptible in the biting cold. Jeremy turned off the engine, took off his helmet, and sat down against a tree, tablet in hand, staring at the control screen. The countdown had just begun. 6H00:00. And Brian was, literally, alone underground. The first 2 hours are proceeding as planned. Through the screen of his tablet, Jeremy observed Brian in the coffin, bathed in a dim red glow. His friend speaks regularly to the camera, trying to maintain a narrative thread. He describes his feelings, jokes, tries to keep a light mind. "It's cold, very cold. It's not the temperature itself, it's the way it clings to your skin, you know. It's humid in here, very humid. I feel like the earth itself is sweating on me." He laughed a little, nervously. Even though I'm lying down, I feel like the earth is weighing on my chest. As if it wants me to fall asleep. But I'm still here, guys. 2 hours in. 4 to go. Nothing complicated. On the surface, Jeremy keeps an eye on the sensors: pressure, temperature, oxygen level, battery voltage. Everything seems stable. He even allows himself to bite into an energy bar while leaning against a tree. But at 13h15, something changes. Brian coughs. A cough, dry at first, then deeper. He grimaces, runs his hand over his forehead. He's sweating, even though the underground temperature is supposed to be stable. Jeremy? The pipe. The vent pipe. There's something weird about it. He taps twice on the wall, an agreed code in case communication fails. Jeremy jumps. He leaps upright. On his tablet, the oxygen indicator drops slowly, abnormally. He looks at the small sensor connected to the pipe. The flow is irregular, almost blocked at times. He rushes towards the hollow trunk that conceals the tube. A crack. He discovers that the pipe outlet is partially blocked by a clump of frost and wet dead leaves, caused by condensation and the cold. He tries to unclog it by hand, but the residue sticks. He blows, scrapes, and tears off what he can. Meanwhile, in the coffin, Brian's breathing is getting harder. His voice is ragged. My head is spinning. My ears are ringing. I think I need some fresh air. He presses the microphone button to further alert Jeremy. But at this precise moment, crackling noises invade the audio channel. The signal is degrading. 13h35. Jeremy can barely hear his voice, distorted and interrupted by digital static. On the tablet, the thermal camera image intermittently blurs. Shapes become ghostly. 13h52. The thermal camera shuts off completely. Black screen. A red icon flashes, lost signal. Jeremy frantically presses the restart commands, to no avail. The video feed doesn't come back. He tries to manually re-establish the connection. Nothing. 14h07. Brian hasn't been heard from for 10 minutes. Jeremy grabs the emergency shovel. His heart is pounding. He begins digging with his bare hands around the pile of dirt. The earth is hard, frozen, dense. It sticks to his gloves. He's breathing heavily. Each shovelful seems to weigh a ton. Hold on, man. Hold on. I'm here. But he knows that alone, without a machine, he would have took at least 1 hour to reach the coffin. 14h21. And click def. The audio system cuts out. Silence total. No more sound. No more picture. Nothing. Jeremy falls to his knees. He screams, but he knows no one will hear him. He opens his phone and dials 911. It's an emergency. Someone is buried alive. I'm sending you the GPS coordinates. I beg you, hurry. The rescue services put almost an hour to reach the clearing. 2 trucks, 5 firefighters, a doctor. They deploy mechanical tools, dig at full speed, without question. Jeremy paces like a madman, his hands full of dirt, his eyes wild. Has 15h46, the coffin is finally cleared. The lid is carefully opened. A metallic smell of dampness, wood, and stale air escapes. Brian is there. Lying down. Silent, the peaceful face, almost as if asleep. But his hands are clenched, curled up, his fingers marked with slight cuts as if he had tried, in his last minutes, to scratch the walls of the coffin. His lips are pale. His eyelids closed. The doctor shakes his head. He is too late. The autopsy, a few days later, will reveal progressive asphyxia, aggravated by condensation in the pipe, the malfunction of the backup battery, and a probable state of panic which accelerated his breathing and his oxygen consumption. The video, hastily edited by Jeremy in memory of his friend, was released 5 days after the funeral. Its title screams, "What happens inside the coffin?" A shocking experience. For the first few hours after it went live, few people paid attention. But quickly, excerpts began circulating on TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. Views exploded. In less than 48 hours, the video had surpassed 22 million views. Brian Wallace's voice, recorded from the darkness, struck a nerve in the collective imagination. We see this 27-year-old man, initially calm, joking, describing the humidity, the feeling of gradual suffocation. Then we see him struggle gently, sweat, stiffen, and finally die. Jeremy's editing doesn't hide anything. He wants us to know. He wants us to understand what really happened. But the reactions are violent. Some cry. Distraught comments appear. "It's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. I will never sleep in peace again. He died for nothing." Others, more harsh, accuse. "You let your friend die for a few views. You are an accomplice. We must ban this kind of experiment." YouTube demonetized the video after 72 hours. Several American media outlets reported on it. Trauma specialists publicly questioned the limits of extreme content in the digital age. But the damage was done. In the video, the final scene is chilling. We see Brian, his eyes closed, then a slower, deeper breath, a pause. The LED light dims. Then nothing. Black screen. Today, a simple white marble marks the grave of Brian Wallace, Mount Washington Cemetery, in Pennsylvania. On the stone, engraved in sober letters, one can read. He wanted to understand fear. He became silent. Jeremy Knox has disappeared from social media. He shut down his YouTube channel and deleted his Instagram, TikTok, and X accounts. He left Pittsburgh and now lives in a cabin near Lake Erie, according to the few witnesses who have encountered him. He spends his days writing, trying to channel his guilt into a book titled The Last Silence, The True Story of Brian Wallace. A moving account of the modern excesses of the quest for visibility at all costs. A book he is not sure he wants to publish. 3 months after Brian's death, the media storm is slowly fading. The internet is igniting elsewhere. New controversies are eclipsing the old ones. But in the shadows, something persists. One rainy May evening, returning from a solitary walk by the lake, Jeremy finds an envelope slipped under the door of his cabin. No stamp. No address. It contains only a glossy, printed sheet of paper, and signed. A few words, centered, in capital letters. Brian wasn't alone underground. Take a closer look at the last 4 minutes. He thinks it's a bad joke. One of those cruel hoaxes born on an obscure forum, by an attention-seeking troll. But the words continue to swirl in his head like a splinter in his skin. Take a closer look at the last 4 minutes. Night has fallen on his modest, isolated cabin in the Catskills Mountains. The wood creaks, the wind whips against the windows. Jeremy still hesitates, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. It's been 3 months since he opened this file. He promised himself he'd never do it again. But curiosity has that bitter taste of guilt. So, slowly, almost reluctantly, he clicks. The file opens. The raw video. No music, no effects, no editing. Just Brian, in that pine coffin, dimly lit by the infrared camera. The first few minutes pass. He jokes, tries to stay calm, to control his breathing. Then panic rises. His oxygen levels dwindle. Sweat beads on his forehead. His eyes desperately search for an exit that doesn't exist. 14H17. Jeremy pauses. He senses something. A shiver runs down his spine. He steps back a few seconds. Listen carefully. And there, amidst Brian's panting breaths, a sound. A whisper. In short, suffocated. But indisputable. It isolates the audio track, adjusts frequencies, filters background noise. And he hears. It's not your time yet. Her throat tightens. It's not Brian's voice. Nor hers. It's something else. A deep, almost bestial voice, as if emerging from an ancient and forgotten place. It doesn't follow the usual rules of sound. It has no clear direction. No echo. No reverb. Jeremy spends the night replaying the clip over and over again, until he can no longer distinguish reality from nightmares. The next day, at his wit's end, he sent the audio file to a sound expert he had met during a previous documentary, Monica Fisher, a freelance sound engineer in Boston. He gives her almost no context, just a question. Is this sound human? 2 days later, Monica calls him. His voice trembles. I ran the clip through the spectrogram, I tested all the frequency ranges. It's not an artifact, not a parasitic noise. It's not a synthetic voice. Silence. And what troubled me most, is that the sound source doesn't seem to be coming from the microphone. It's coming from the wood. From the wood of the coffin. Jeremy remains silent. His heart beats violently against his chest. He hangs up, his hands freezing. The coffin, he knows, was not buried. The police kept it as evidence because of the tragic and viral nature of Brian's death. He contacts a former colleague, now an archivist at a court warehouse in Kings County, Brooklyn. 3 days later, he stands in front of a vast, windowless hangar with concrete walls. The interior is silent and heavy. In a corner, under a gray tarpaulin, lies the coffin. When Jeremy lifts the tarp, a pungent, damp smell assailed him, a mixture of moldy wood, earth, and something he couldn't name. He approaches slowly, his heart pounding. The wood looks intact, from the outside. But when he opens the lid, his breath catches. Inside, the walls are scratched. More these are not Brian's marks. Jeremy saw him struggle in the video. His movements were heavy, slow, and weakened. His fingernail marks were clearly visible. Long, desperate gashes. But there, on the lid, in a specific corner, smaller scratches. Deeper. Multiple. As if made by fingers of child. Some of the notches look recent. The wood in this area is lighter. As if they had been made after the final closing of the coffin. Jeremy steps back, unable to speak. On pure reflex, he takes a photo. Then two. Then films for a few seconds with his phone. And suddenly, in the silence of the hangar, the wood creaks. A short, dry crack. Just to his right. He turns around, but there's nothing there. Nothing, except a slight rustling. As if something was crawling, slowly, just under the concrete slab. Jeremy Rowe, now haunted by voices and visions, decides to go back to the source. He returns to the vacant lot in the Allegheny Forest where they filmed the experiment, a simple coffin survival test for his YouTube channel. This secluded, wooded location seemed innocuous, but it hid an ancient truth. He began researching the Allegheny County archives. There, among cadastral maps and dusty old maps, he discovered a marginal note on a property register area attached to the parish of St. Falkner, former disused cemetery, transferred in 1903. But there was no tangible evidence that all the bodies had been exhumed. Intrigued, Jeremy contacts Martha Keller, a retired local archivist, who agrees to help him. Together, they search through microfilms of vintage newspapers. A clipping from the Allegheny Herald, dated November 17, 1879, caught their attention. Title: Macabre Discovery, Children's Bodies Found Buried in the Middle of the Forest. Villagers speak of a spirit trapped beneath the earth, claiming the souls of those who are too curious. The article, half erased by time, mentions the disappearance of children aged 5 to 10. Some were reportedly found with their eyes open and their hands clenched, as if they had been struggling even after death. The term whisperwood, whispering woods, is used to refer to the forest at the time. Jeremy feels his stomach knot. That night, the dream returns, but even more vivid. Brian is there, in the coffin, his eyes milky white, but conscious. His lips don't move, yet a cold voice echoes in the air of the dream, as if coming from the earth itself. You should never have closed that lid. Jeremy wakes up in a sweat. The air in his room is freezing. He gets up, turns on the light, and notices that his desk drawer is ajar. Inside, the old lavalier microphone used in the experiment, the one he hadn't touched since, is on. A red light is flashing. He plugs the device into his computer, his hands trembling. A single audio file is inside. When he opens it, a heavy silence precedes a hoarse, almost animal voice. He wants another body. Jeremy disappears a week later. His car is found in a field bordering the Allegheny forest, engine off, door open. On the passenger seat, a GoPro camera rests, still recording. The video shows only black, but the audio reveals a haunting sequence, a slow, steady rhythm, like a fingernail against wood. Tap. 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 Technical analysis confirms, the sound is not coming from the external environment. It seems to be coming from the inside, from a box, like a coffin. The police, unable to find a rational explanation, closed the case as worrying disappearance. But in the fan forums of Jeremy's YouTube channel, Beyond Limits, a rumor grows. An anonymous channel, with no visible subscribers, posts a video under the name. Do you hear what I hear? It's a static, black shot, with amplified sound. After 3 minutes of silence, we hear the same deep, cavernous voice. He is never alone underground. Then, a breath. Heavy. Suffocating. As if someone were trapped alive. Internet users are divided, reality or Jeremy's macabre stroke of genius? But some recognize in the last seconds, a blurred silhouette, a face against a window, and wide-open eyes. This is not Jeremy. He is a child.